Good morning. Welcome to our iWork NC Virtual NC Career Connection speaker series. Today we're excited to have Miss Crystal Harden, and she works for the Morehead Planetarium and Science Center, including the North Carolina Science Festival Outreach and On-Site Program. She also oversees diversity and inclusion initiatives. Before joining Morehead in 2008, she served as an educational consultant for the California Department of Education. She has a bachelor's degree in chemistry from NC Central University and a master's degree from UNC Chapel Hill. She's also pursuing a doctorate in education at UNC Chapel Hill. She also served as an expert on mobile science programs for the U.S. Department of State and Amman, Jordan. So, Miss Barton, you have quite an impressive resume there. So, we'd like to
Thank you.
talk to you a little bit first about you went from a chemistry degree to working in education. So, could you share a little bit about what you did in order to pursue that career in first chemistry and how it led to this current initiative you're doing?
Sure. Really, it's not that interesting in the sense that I was actually, what my bio doesn't illustrate, is that I was a teaching fellow. I was a North Carolina teaching fellow. I was actually in the second group that started back in 1988. And then as a teaching fellow, when you went to certain undergraduate institutions, if you were going to be a secondary teacher, you really were majoring in mathematics or chemistry, and then you had the additional courses that really certified you in education. So my degree is actually in chemistry with education certification. So I was a teaching fellow, and part of that program then was to become a secondary teacher for 4 years. And I did. I taught high school in North Carolina for 4 years and ended up teaching as well in Alabama and in California, teaching high school chemistry. So education was always a part of the plan from high school.
Wow, that's very interesting. And I'm so glad to hear about your experience as a teaching fellow. Is there any advice you might give our students that might be interested in following that pursuit since the teaching fellow program is back in stated now?
It is reinstated. I believe it's at on four campuses in North Carolina currently. But I would also say outside of that program, there are other teaching opportunity programs at other institutions. And I would say definitely what we've seen in the last several years is there is a need for more teachers, and teachers definitely, when we look at diversity in terms of background and experiences, to enter the workforce, because our students are different. Our students are changing, and our students are coming from different experiences and different backgrounds. And whether we are talking, whatever spectrum we're talking about. And I think it's important that our teachers represent our students. And so hopefully these programs will encourage those changes in the teacher workforce. But if you are interested in education, I would say that there is nothing more rewarding than having a lifelong impact on young people. I won't tell my age, but not that I'm afraid of it, but I was 22 when I first started teaching high school. And so my students that I taught at the time they looked at me more like an older sister because I was so close in age to them. And those are students I still have relationships with now and contacts with, and now are watching their children go to college, and they're still contacting me for advice and resources and things like that. And I still have relationships with my students all the way from North Carolina to Alabama to California. So it is a profession that has so many rewards, but we do need to have more emphasis and more understanding of the field from those outside of the field.
Absolutely. We need good teachers, and we know that there's going to be a teacher shortage for this very reason because a lot of people are not choosing this path. One, because of sometimes the financial gains are not as much, but like you say, the rewards are even more so because we do have an impact. And I think even COVID-19 has really impacted how much teachers really do, and parents are seeing that as they're having to work with their own students at home. Tell us how you moved from your role as a teacher. Did you live in Amman, Jordan, when you worked for the Department of State?
No, so I from started teaching in North Carolina in Wilson County, and after 4 years, I began to work in informal science education. I actually went to work at a science center and museum in my hometown, and was the director of education and eventually the assistant director there at the museum there. And so that was my first experience in informal science education. And I love the creativity and the innovation behind being able to create curriculum and programs and then seeing them, just come to life and seeing your vision come forth. So after a few years of that, at the time, my ex-husband began to travel with his career, and I had positions where I was either teaching high school, or I also had state government positions. Um, I was a state energy education coordinator for the state of Arkansas Energy Office, and then I was an educational consultant for the Department of Education in California. And those were my experiences in state government. So when the opportunity came for me to return to North Carolina and return to work at UNC Chapel Hill at Morehead, um, I was really excited because it was a combination of my previous experiences in informal science education as well as state government. And when I took the position at Morehead, there was not an outreach department. Um, the only program that they had was at that time a mobile lab program, and we had two 40-foot mobile buses, and they, like the type of Greyhound bus, but they were retrofitted to be labs on wheels. And that's the only type of outreach Morehead had, and it was a program that was being kind of assimilated into Morehead. No one knew what to do with this program, and I was hired to figure that out. And when I was hired, we continued that program of providing statewide services with these two mobile labs. And we each bus had about 200,000 miles on it by the time we retired them. And they covered the state of North Carolina. And we had a slogan of from Cherokee to Manio, because we went everywhere. We put the buses on the ferry to go to Ocracoke Island. And what would happen is we would have visits at schools with teachers, and they would be able to bring their students onto the mobile labs and have curriculum activities that they could not provide in their classroom, like gel electrophoresis, for example. We could do those on the mobile labs. Teachers could meet their goals and objectives and their standards, but they didn't have to have the burden of trying to figure out how to purchase the equipment because it's very expensive. And our program was one of only a couple very successful long-term mobile lab programs in the state of North Carolina. And so it just so happened, I won't say it was, obviously, yes, it became globally known because at that time, what happened was, sorry, everyone about that interruption. At that time, we became globally known, and I received a call one day from the U.S. Department of Education. I'm sorry, the U.S. Department of State, asking me if I would consult with the U.S. Department of State, the embassy in Amman, Jordan. They wanted to start a mobile lab, a mobile science program in Amman, Jordan, in the rural community with this bus, and they needed guidance and consulting on how to get it started and how to get it off the ground. So the U.S. Department of State actually sent me over to Amman to work as an expert in helping them launch this initiative. And so I was over there for about 10 days, and their program involved two of their universities there in Amman, as well as what would be their their DPI, their Ministry of Education. Um, and they were having college students, wanted college students to participate in this. And it was really a concept very similar to what we do at UNC. And that is why they sought us out. And so I consulted with them and helped them. It took them about another year to get their program going, but they did get their program going for a while and they used college students to operate their program.
Wow, that is so interesting. And I know that you love being able to bring that initiative forth. And that leads me to another thing, because it sounds like maybe it was a great networking opportunity for you to find resources and to think about other ways to implement these particular programs even here in the state. So what
Yeah.
could you share with our students about how networking and forming networks would be beneficial to them as they seek out opportunities for even going to college or getting scholarships or things along those lines?
Networks are definitely important. I think also as you go to college, one of the first things I recommend to students stepping on college campuses is to really seek out seek out an advisor and a mentor. And that person does not necessarily need to be someone in your area of interest, but definitely take some time in getting to know the various departments on campus. But getting a mentor and an advisor on campus is so very important, and using the resources that are available, whether that is the writing centers, the career centers, or whatever other type of student-based groups, but really using the resources. Because when you kind of affiliate yourself with these various groups, you learn more people. And as you learn more people, you are able to find people who can help you navigate the different areas of interest that you may have. And that's so very important, is to find those pathways to help you navigate. And, for people who are not as, who may be a little shy in terms of, going to various things and being more vocal, you can definitely make connections through, sending emails. I tell, one of the things I tell students, especially when they're applying for grad school, is reach out to those universities, professors, and things like that. You may get some no's, you may not hear from some, but you will hear from someone. And reaching out to people in these institutions to just seek more information. And that is that's one way of networking, even by just email. But it is so important to seek those things out. And then also, when you are in college, thinking about how can you help your community, whether it's the community that where your hometown, or whether it is your college town community, but how can you help? And always think about what opportunities are there for you to help the community and to help serve in the community, and what that looks like and what that can look like. Whether that is, some people really get excited by, doing things that allow them to do, food bank type of things. But some people get excited about some of the programs that we offer, like being speakers in classrooms for students, being facilitators of activities at family science night events that we put on. So those are ways for students to give back. And if you represent an area that is underrepresented in STEM, if you are in college and you are a representation of that, it is so important for young people to see you and see your representation in the field. Not only those who may be coming behind you, but those who also may not look like you. It is important for people to understand that when we say science for all, it means science for all. And the one way that we show that to people is by having a representation of people put forth in audiences. And I think that is so important, that people realize that we need to see so many different shades and in everyone's differences when we bring forth things into communities. That is how people, I believe that is how people really understand that we are all kind of united in this world, when we can see all the different viewpoints of us as human beings.
Well said, Miss Harden, because we know that this is very important in the world we live in right now. So thank you for bringing those very important points that we have opportunities for everyone. And we know science sometimes is an underrepresented area along with math because it's just harder for sometimes students to see themselves doing those roles. So how can they see if this is an interest they have and how can they work towards finding a career in maybe these math and science STEM fields? What recommendations do you have for them as middle schoolers and high schoolers to help them know if this is a way to pursue towards a good career for them?
Well, I think it's not only a message for the students, but also for parents and for teachers. For parents and for teachers, if you see a child who you may think, okay, this child may have a C average in science, but this child really gets so excited when you are doing activities around um, friction or motion, and or this child gets really excited when you're talking about animals, and that that is a sign that that child has an interest maybe in life sciences or in physical sciences, and that maybe there is some nurturing and some encouragement and support that is needed for that child, even though their grades may not reflect that you think may not reflect to anyone or whomever that this child can be a physicist one day. But all it takes is a spark and an interest and a push. And that can come from so many different ways than just looking at a grade. And that is one of the things that we do at Morehead Planetarium and Science Center. We are really about supporting and encouraging children with a spark and with an interest. And we encourage parents and teachers to realize that and to see that as well and do the same. And maybe, there's not enough time in the classroom, but teachers encouraging your students and your parents to that there are other opportunities and resources out here that are free, like programs at Morehead Planetarium and Science Center, where their child can still be engaged in science and be encouraged and supported and inspired. That is so important, especially when you have little African American girls that look like me. I don't. Someone may see me walking down the street and would not think I have a degree in chemistry, but I do. And so it's so important that teachers see those kinds of interests and support them and encourage them. For parents as well, if you see your child loves going in your kitchen and mixing stuff, hopefully you can seek out opportunities where you can support your child in, instead of tearing up your kitchen, well, not only tearing, please let them tear up your kitchen, that's a good thing, but not only tearing up your kitchen, but come over to Morehead and, tear up our space as well. We love that. We love hands-on active learning. And there are other science centers and spaces as well, but it's so important for that support to come for children. And then for young people, it is so important that if you have that interest, that don't be discouraged by things like a grade. If you love mixing things and all those kinds of things, you know think about the internet. Is there some really good quality, safe things out there for young people to find that they can do at home? And I think it's just important that for young people, not to allow anyone to deflate them in terms of their dream and their interest. And I think for younger children, it's harder for them on their own to find that support. That's why I really think we speak to teachers and we speak to parents and organizations like myself to do that. I think we have a responsibility, for younger children, to really see those things and support them in reaching their dreams.
That is so well articulated, that sparking an interest. I love that as a teacher and as a person, because sometimes I think students do get discouraged by formal education, that a grade is something that they have to work towards, but maybe that might be a little harder. So if we can spark these interests, and I love how you included teachers, parents, to look for these opportunities for their students. And speaking to that, how did you really become interested in chemistry? Because that would have probably been from high school, I would imagine, or maybe middle school. So what sparked your interest?
That is really a funny story. For all the way through high school, I thought I was going to, I love working with numbers. And I thought I was going to follow in the footsteps of one of my family members and go into business. And with the Teaching Fellows program, I was going to be a business education teacher. And, but I had taken high school chemistry my junior year. And I was fortunate enough to have an African American female high school chemistry teacher. And I loved chemistry. And the way that she made chemical reactions, the way she explained mixtures and chemical reactions, I just fell in love with it. Did very well. And she was a tough teacher. So when I received the scholarship, I was going to North Carolina Central to begin my orientation process. At the time, the Dean of Education, the Dean of the department, was helping my mother and I with my registration process, and he asked me what was my intended major. I told him business. And for whatever reason, he looked at me and he said, I don't think that's it for you. And he said, I see you doing something where there are not a lot of Black women. And he said, there's got to be something else um, you enjoy, you really enjoyed in high school. And my world was turned upside down at that moment because I'm like, I just told you I wanted to be a business teacher. And he said, what else? And I just thought of my high school chemistry teacher. And I said, chemistry. I love my chemistry class. And he said, that's it. You're going to be a chemist. And he made my major chemistry. And I thought, I'm not going to last. This man has lost his mind. And then I went and I stepped into my general chem 101 class. And my professor was a man by the name of Dr. John Myers, a white male, teaching at an HBCU. And I thought, oh yeah, I'm out of here. And within a couple of classes, this man had won my heart, and I was in love. The way he taught chemistry, I cannot, I mean, it was just like, I don't want to say it was magical, but he made it come, it's hands-on anyway, but just his lectures and how he explained everything. I was just absorbing everything. And then he saw something in me and he began to just mentor me and, tell me that he saw all this potential in me to be this great chemist and this great researcher. And he ended up having me, I did my undergraduate research with him. I had him for both parts of general chem, and then I had organic chemistry under him. And I mean, I remember just my memories of that. He was that person that really built my confidence. And he was that mentor, he was that advisor. And so that's really my story. And that's why I'm so passionate about the responsibility that we have when we get in certain roles to be mentors and supporters and encouragers and advisors for young people, because it makes such a big difference, because I have seen that in my life. And yeah, so that's why I think it's really important. But that's how chemistry came to be. And then so when I started teaching chemistry, I was that teacher who I would always get in trouble in my end of the hall because my classes were never quiet. If you wanted a quiet class, don't come on my end of the hallway, because I have a loud voice. I wanted my kids to be loud. Chemistry is all about, experimenting. I would always, we'd have this thing in my class about blowing stuff up safely. I was always about doing the big bang, doing the big explosion, the big bang. And so it was always loud. I was always doing something. And I just felt like, science needed to be live and active. And that's just how I taught my students. And, some of my students have gone on to be scientists, have gone on to be teachers. But they will tell it's funny that they can remember certain days in class and certain experiments and certain things I taught them. And that's really cool. So that's just the kind of teacher I became, and so it's really important, for me to still um, encourage that in the field.
That's just a wonderful story how you had these mentors, and I'm sure that person that was talking to you there at the college had probably looked at your transcript and thought, I see these things in her, but directed you in that direction. And then you took those chemistry classes, loved them, and you had this teacher that was so impactful. And what a great story, because teachers do make a difference. And when we
Definitely.
make those connections and those just ways that we want to see ourselves helping others. And so you're paid it forward when you became a teacher and you did make science interested in life. And I came through during a time in school when science was maybe one of those topics we dropped or forgot about. We read out of a book. It wasn't very exciting. And I would have loved to have had better science classes myself, because my children were more interested in science and taught me a lot about science. And also, when I worked in middle school, I was a business education teacher. So I paired with the science teacher to do a lot of integrated activities and loved what we did. So I can see why your classes were so enjoyable for your students. What advice would you give our students as they are looking at going to college and filling out those essays, those college applications? What types of things should they do to make themselves stand out as they become a pool of lots of applicants? What can they do to make their resumes stand out for those admission counselors? Any advice?
Wow, that's a tough one, because I really do think it kind of depends on where you are applying. Because I think the different campuses and different admissions counselors are looking for different things. Um, you have some institutions where they are looking for their students to talk about their holistic experience through high school. You have some, and so those students would give a journey of their would get would give the admission counselors a look in term an eye view in terms of their journey through high school holistically, in what their extracurricular activities, their school-based activities, their school experiences, and all of that, and how that has made them into this holistic person that they are today. But then you have some campuses, I think, that are looking for students to really demonstrate and illustrate their passion and where they see themselves and what their dreams are. Um, and I think that those students, really have to talk about, just go for it, and really express why they want to what they want to do after leaving that particular institution, and how that institution can help them get to that goal. Um, but I think it really depends on um, what what institution it is. But the main thing really is to be true to yourself, true to who you are, um, and not try to write something that you think someone wants to hear if that's not who you really are. Um, but just being true to who you are and what you have done and what your experiences are, and being real and genuine about those experiences, I think is key.
That is wonderful advice, because we have to be able to show who we are and whatever. And speaking to that different universities, colleges, and even if you go to community college, whatever path you choose, do you feel it's very important for them to really research the university college that they want to attend to make sure they have the types of programs and interests that would be important for their post-secondary education?
Yeah, definitely. I think it is important to research where you are interested in. One, to make sure that They have programs that fit your desires, your passions, and your dreams and your interests. And then also to see if they have uh, programs and groups and extracurricular things that meet also you who you are outside of the academic side of it. I think those things are key and very important to really make sure it's a great fit for you, because just because it was a great fit for your parents however many years ago does not necessarily mean that it's going to be the right fit for you. So definitely you have to research and visit, and sometimes you got to visit more than once. You got to visit at different um, for different types of times of year or different experiences happening. Um, but if you can, definitely, visit and really talk to students and a variety of students, as well as, talking to faculty. I think that is so very important to do as well. Um, yeah, I think those are really good ways to start. And also seeing what the community outside of the campus, what is the community like? And I stress, I think this is becoming more and more important for students, looking at the community around the campus and what opportunities are there for you to be to involve yourself in the community, um, whether you like to to do certain volunteer work, or whether you like to do other types of things in the community or other types of outreach. um, Making sure that that community is going to be a great fit for you also is very important.
That is wonderful advice because knowing what you want is very important, and just not going somewhere because it's a certain name or your parents went there or someone else, your friends might be going. It's good to look at those interests. And I loved how you even talked about the community and what types of opportunities are available, because rural or non-rural places would be a consideration too. So thank you for bringing that point out. You talked about working in Amman, Jordan, and I know UNC Chapel Hill's very diversified. So when we talk about global education, global citizens, what tips would you give our students about even taking foreign language, doing cultural activities? We know that's very important for the world they live in, especially. So, what tips would you give them for maybe expanding their opportunities?
Wow, that's a great question. um, I think it is really important. Yes, I think being bilingual is a necessity in the world that we are going forward in. Unfortunately, I need to freshen up on some of mine, but being bilingual, I think, is very important. Um, and when we think about programming, it is so important to think about the various cultures um, that are in your community, and how you include those cultures in your work. That is one thing that we do at Morehead. When we are now we're not perfect at it. We've made mistakes, and we've learned a lot. But one of the things that we have learned is that when you create a program and you really involve the community that you hope to serve, and you listen to that community and you hear them on the culture of their community. And culture, and remember, when we talk about the word culture, that's very broad, in the sense that culture is just not about ethnicity and race, but culture is about just how does that community move? How does that community react to things? What is the routine in that culture, in that community? These make up the culture of a community, these kinds of things. And so it's very important to have those people at the table in the planning and listening to them. And because if you want a successful program, if you want to, whether you are one person trying to do something or you are a group, if you want to be successful in a community and really immerse yourself and have them respect your work and participate in your work, you have to involve them, and you have to involve them and listen to them. And they have to be on board, and they have to be participants. And I think a lot of times where things are not successful is because people don't respect the communities they're going into. They don't take the time to get to know the communities that they're going into. They think they have something great, and it may be great, but if you don't know that it's what that community needs, what that community wants, and that it will benefit them, it's not going to be successful. And so when you think about, global, whether you are thinking local in your community or whether you are thinking in another country, it is very important to remember that you are not the end all be all. That if it is you have to include the people that you want to serve. Excuse me, you have to include the people that you want to serve. You got to include those people at the table. They have to be participants and planners, and they have to be heard. And lots of times we invite people to the table, but I say this all the time, when you invite people to the table, remember they want to eat. So sometimes people are invited to the table, but people don't let them eat. Let people make their plate and eat. And what that means is that they participate in the work. It is their work. They have ownership. That is the only way programs globally, nationally, locally are going to be successful. And it starts, and there's so many young people with great ideas and great innovations coming forth. And that is one key thing that I hope that they realize and keep in mind, is that you have to listen to the community that you're serving and involve them in the implementation and development process.
That is some great advice, and thank you for bringing all those points out. I love that you talked about active listening and how important that is in order to get buy-in to whatever we're working towards. So, thinking about those skill sets, what are some other soft skills that are beneficial to students as they move, even in where they're at in high school, college, the workplace, because they cover a broad range of areas? What should they really focus on to be active listeners and change makers for our world?
Active listening is not easy. And I will admit, I am not one of the best experts on that. It is not one of my strengths sometimes. But it really takes a person, I think, being vulnerable to criticism to be an active listener. Um, because sometimes we don't want to hear that this great thing that we think we have, the other person across the table, they don't get it, they don't understand it. And sometimes it's just that you need to have more conversation and more illustration, and it's not that they don't want to get it, they just can't, they're not seeing it through your lens yet. And so that takes communication and conversation. And I think young people have to realize, and I think technology makes the face-to-face thing difficult, I think, because they talk through texts and all these kinds of things, but face-to-face conversation is so important because you can read body language, and you can hear tones, and you can hear inflections and things like that. So um, practicing your face-to-face interactions with people is so very important, and practicing how you use inflection and how you use your body language. But also, if you find that you are on the shy side in terms of being able to talk to people, or to talk in groups, you've got to figure out, okay, how, if I'm shy in terms of meetings and or one-on-ones, and how do I work through this? How do I still communicate my perspective, my points, my viewpoints, my lens? And so, one of the things that I've seen some people do is they start with something written as a way to get the conversation going. They start with some written thoughts as a jump starter to an upcoming conversation. That's one thing to think about if you were on the shy side. But really, the other thing is too, is being able to, and this is difficult, but being able to communicate something on the fly. Taking a breath, pausing, getting your thoughts together, and then being able to roll out what you're trying to communicate, or what your idea, your vision is on the fly. Again, takes practice. So these are kinds of things that I think young people maybe aren't told about. It's not talked about. There's not a course, maybe not a class about it. But these are things that I think that they can get together and practice and talk about, that are important for these spaces of change, that I think they are well prepared to lead generations through.
Awesome advice, because I think, especially in the times we live in, that face-to-face is still an important way for us to communicate. And I know that most of my students prefer texting or even communications with me, but sometimes it's just good to have those even phone conversations, or to get on a Zoom, or to where you can see people. And one of the things that I love that you pointed out, that sometimes we do need to practice what we're trying to do, because when we invest in it, it's important to us. And I love that you said, even if it's not a formal class, you could practice with your friends,
Mhm.
the people in like maybe a group. So that is a wonderful tip, because communication skills are so needful. And
Mhm.
every speaker that we talk to, that is one of the key things that they bring up, also about being able to take criticism and taking it and using it to improve whatever you're trying to do, whether it's work, whether it's to bring about programs or whatever. So that is just tremendous advice. Thank you so much. I know you want to speak a little bit about the programs that you have there at the planetarium. So we're at 11:42, so we might want to touch on that also. I'm just loving all your other points. I
Sure,
love
sure.
the activity that you did with the mobile lab, because I actually live in far western North Carolina, and we used to do a trip Murphy to Manio with our eighth graders to take them across the state. So I love the story about the mobile lab that you had. Is that still in practice, or do you just do things virtually now?
Well, we have actually retired those mobile labs. We had them for 20 years. Well, UNC had them for 20 years. And after 20 years, we retired those vehicles. And Morehead was able to secure funding to purchase 3 new types of mobile vehicles. So now we have 3, and we can look at our website, and I'm not sure if the images of the vehicles are there, but the programs are there. We have 3 other kind of mobile vehicle programs. One is called Our Physical World, Lab to Life. Our second one is Lab to Life, and then we have one called Earth and Beyond as well. And so those are our kind of our replacement mobile vehicles, mobile programs, excuse me.
Do you want to pull up your website? I can stop sharing and you can share your screen if you'd like to do that, and highlight
Yes,
some of the
I am
things.
ready. I can just kind of run people through what we have happening at Morehead.
Do you see your screen, share screen?
Let me see. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get there, and there we go. And right here. Okay. All right. So this was the program I was talking about, Earth and Beyond, Lab to Life, and Our Physical World. These are our mobile vehicle programs. And let me see, I'm gonna try and see if there is I'm not sure if there's a vehicle picture in any of these, or may not be. Oh, there we go. So here is our new mobile vehicles. These are more of the high top van style. And this is our new Earth and Beyond vehicle. And so now these vehicles travel out to schools all across the state of North Carolina. I'm talking pre-COVID, travel out to schools all across the state of North Carolina with an educator. And inside of this vehicle, for instance, would be astronomy-based type activities, even included our mobile planetarium, our portable full dome digital planetarium in this vehicle. And then let me navigate back. Currently during COVID, we have our virtual STEMville program offerings. And I'll tell you a little bit about this name STEMville, because the name STEMville really talks to the Science for All and the inclusion component of what we do at Morehead. So I'll talk more about that. But a virtual STEMville are the programs that we are offering as our suite of programs that we have during this COVID time. We have Astronomy Avenue, Scientist Block Party, and Experiment Expressway. And you get the theme in terms of Ville, like a town, what you would find in a town. And then we have our other types of programs. I want to talk about the STEMville Science Symposium and how this started. This is an opportunity where we have, we put on a half-day science conference for young people, for children, grades 4 through 7. So just like adults go to conferences and we would have a check-in and we would get our check-in bag, and then we go to a keynote session, and then we go to breakout sessions. We designed the same thing called STEMville Science Symposium, where we would had a keynote, and a couple years we had a DJ in our theater at 9 a.m. in the morning, but we'd have a keynote session, and then they would break out into these, go into these sessions that they signed up for, these breakout sessions. And it's all through registration. They would register, select their sessions, and then they would go to those sessions. Now, the really cool thing about this science symposium is that we formed partnerships because we felt like we really wanted to make sure that this was a representation of Morehead and our beliefs around diversity and inclusion. So we partnered with certain schools and with certain organizations that served underrepresented populations in STEM. And we provided free opportunities for them to come to this science conference. Now the name is STEMville. Now, if you know North Carolina has villes. Everything's a ville. There's Fayetteville, Greenville, Statesville, Reedsville, villes. And so when you're in North Carolina and you hear ville, something ville, you know you're talking about a town, a community. And so we wanted to create that thought when we think about science, being this community for everyone, this science for all community. So we came up with STEMville. Now there happens to be a STEM North Carolina, but we named our space STEMville. And so STEMville is this when we talk about inclusion and something for everyone, we use the name STEMville. And so this model of a science conference, this is something that can be duplicated, whether you are a school, whether you are another science center. Something like this is something that can be easily duplicated, and you can work with partners to make sure that you are inclusive in your communities as well. And it's a very inexpensive model. Our presenters are undergraduate some undergraduate and mostly and things like that. So it's a great opportunity. Let me see. Trying to see what other high schoolers. Here's an opportunity for high schoolers that we also want to talk about. Teen Science Cafe. We have these monthly. They're virtual right now, but we have monthly they're a science cafe night. Teens come out, they have some food, and they listen to a scientist kind of geek out and talk about science stuff. And they have this network, and that's what they may spend their Friday nights. Again, these are programs that are so easily duplicated, no matter where where you are, even schools can create these spaces for teens to do this kind of stuff. And I want to say to teachers and to administrators, if you are close to a university, um, or even a community college, there are professors, faculty, staff there who would love to talk to young people. All you have to do is ask. And even there are, if you have a business industry that is science related in your community, there are people there who would love to talk to young people. Maybe they may need a little bit of encouragement because they're thinking, okay, am I really a scientist? But they love to talk, and young people love to hear someone other than, their teachers talk about some really cool stuff happening. And so we love to create opportunities and spaces like that for young people. I do want to talk about, so the North Carolina Science Festival is our big production. We put on the North Carolina Science Festival in April. It is a whole month celebration of science around the state of North Carolina. I think last year we had, I'm going to quote numbers and hope I'm close. I think we had about 350 K-12 events and 450 public events happening all across the state of North Carolina. Let me see. Close, yeah, over 350 events. Now this is our virtual. We flipped and went virtual at the last minute in April, but before, so I'm talking 2019, what our numbers look like. But so it's a whole month of science, and we have everything from Duke Energy Family Science Nights happening in schools to we have wineries doing science-based activities in wineries and breweries all across the state of North Carolina. And then the other really cool thing that we do, I'm going to see if I can go back here. I'm going to go back to our website. I want to find and talk about the program, our science. Okay. Hold on with me. Hopefully I can may not be able to find it right now. Let's see. I wanted to talk about one of the programs that we do, that we put on for the GSK North Carolina is our Science After School program and our Science in the Summer program. I may not be able to find it here, but I can just talk about those programs. Here's another really cool program that we are going to launch kits for. We received funding for, and we're going to launch kits for in January, is Explore Las Australias. And so we have, it's a bilingual initiative where we have kits that you facilitate your at home exploration of moon phases and stars. And the kits are just beautifully designed by our former graphics designer. And again, they are bilingual kits, and we've sent some of these out already across the state of North Carolina. And we're going to do a second round of this initiative with schools and organizations in January as well. And then we have couple other programs that we have done that I'll talk about. One is the Saunders Science Scholars Program. This is a cohort of 30 families that are where we have kind of, I don't want to say adopted is not the right word, but kind of immersed ourselves into a community in Gates County, North Carolina. And we have, not only do we provide all of our outreach programs that we do with Morehead, we immerse those into the school system there in Gates County, but we also have a group of 30 families that participate in a family science enrichment program monthly. And then during the summer, the students have a summer camp week. And when these students are they started in 6th grade, and we will follow them all the way to high school. And their high school model will involve them actually becoming facilitators of science programs in their county. And then during the summers, they will go on college tours. And our goal is to be able to work with funders to provide for them a free college experience outside of their grants and scholarship awards that they receive. And then the other program that we have that has really taken on a life of its own is a program that we started called Hidden No More. Hidden No More started, wow, when we found out about Hidden Figures, when we found out um, that these women had a connection to the space race, because Morehead trained all the astronauts on celestial navigation, and when we heard about the movie coming out in the book, we realized that who should be telling the story? Well, we should have known the story first of all. Then we should have been telling the story. And so it first started with a photo exhibit, and we had a photo exhibit that featured the first in flight stories, as well as the um, the uh, uh, the NASA women who were these hidden figures of these. I'm trying to remember the exact what they call women computers is what they called them at the time. Featured the women computers, and we actually had images that came from the Vong family. So the family of Dorothy Vong came to the premiere of this, as well as the author of the book, Margot Lee Shetterly. And from that, we started a 2-year tour that went around the state of North Carolina to all of the UNC system institutions, called Hidden No More STEM Women of Color. The tour featured the family of Dorothy Vaughn, along with other women who were first in some form or fashion for the state of North Carolina. And then after that tour, we actually received a National Science Foundation grant called Hidden No More, shedding light on science stories in the shadows. And this is a 5-year project that was funded by the National Science Foundation for us to continue to use our form of documentaries, um, animated stories, VR, VR, and virtual reality, as well as hands-on curriculum activities to continue to tell the stories of those hidden in the shadows through the topic of light, such as Lewis Latimer and others. So we are working on that project also. And here are 2 of the animated shorts that we actually created, part of this hidden no more that we have. One is about animated short for Dorothy Vaughn, and the other is Carlos Finlay. And these are all free resources on our YouTube channel for teachers to use with their students as well. Okay, I think I'm going to stop sharing now and see if there are any more questions for me. But there are a lot of other resources available on our website as well.
Well, Ms. Harden, those are great activities, initiatives, and what wonderful resources that schools could even use for the students, and the students can access on their own. So thanks for sharing those. And I put all these things can be found on your Morehead Planetarium and Science Center website here in the chat. So we'll make sure that people know that, because you have so many wonderful programs, and I know your educational pursuits have led you to help develop some of those. So thank you. Would anyone like to ask a question as we finish up here? Ms. Pullen or Ms. Harrison, any of you want to ask? We'd love to have one. Well, I'm not seeing any, Ms. Harden, and we're looking like I'm going to hate to end this session. There's just too much information that I'd love to ask more about, but maybe we can get you to come back again. But thank you so much for sharing all these wonderful tips for our students as they pursue a post-secondary education into a career, and also these wonderful initiatives you have there at Morehead Planetarium and Science Center, and we're so glad that you were able to join us today, as well as our guests. Thank
But
you.
thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, I have loved it. So thank you that everyone has come, and we'll put this on our work website, and you'll be able to share this wonderful information with others in the archives. So everyone have a great day, and thank you, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.